So I'd first like to just be able to call the meeting to order if we could. And then the introduction of late items. I don't believe we have anything. Tom Osborne and myself created the agenda. We think it covers enough for us for this morning. And again, just there's a technical issue, so I'm looking over here. I know the camera's over here, but we can see you guys all over here, so it's not like we have our backs to you. But so if we're looking that way, it's because our camera is here, and unfortunately our screen doesn't work over there. So apologies to that. So if I could have, so there's no introduction of late items, and this is kind of adoption of the agenda. If anyone would move for that. Ian Thorpe, and then seconded by Cheryl. All in favor? Great. So presentations, so it's introduction. So again, this has been a while in getting established, and really appreciate the electoral areas and Lanceville and city councilors' patience with us in establishing a new committee to what we think is a really, really solid agreement that's been in place for many, many years, and could definitely helps the whole area in its provision of recreation, and particularly recreational services and field services in a partnership that goes back many years, a couple decades now. So, and with that, I also want to have just a chance for everyone to go around and introduce who everyone is and their roles on this. And so again, myself, Richard Harding, General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture, and I'll go to my left, which is
Jim Turley, City Councilor.
And I'm just going to go to our legislators. We want to make this actually all happen, and we're all helping you out here today. So
I'm Calissa Lundgren, Recording Secretary.
And I'm Sheila Gurry. I don't think I'm in view right now, but I'm the Director of Legislative Services and the Corporate Officer, so I'm here to help with the meeting today.
and just as we're getting into some of the other details, there might be some questions from the different members on how we do our financials, our finance department, so I'll let them introduce themselves. They'll be here later on. Maybe we'll look at that, because that's actually the camera there.
Laura Mercer, Director of Finance.
Jane Matheson, Senior Accountant.
And then maybe we'll go from on our side then, if you want to, Maureen, do you want us to kick us off?
Thank you, Richard. I'm Maureen Young, and I'm the Director for Electoral Area C. Not sure if you can hear me. I hear an echo.
Yeah, there's a little one there. Let's go ahead, and then next.
Yeah.
How about Gabriela?
That's me, Richard. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ian Thorpe, representing the City of Nanaimo on this committee.
How about Gabriela?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Craig, representing Electoral Area B.
Electoral Area A is
And my home turf, Cedar?
Yes, I'm Keith Wilson, RDN Electoral Area A Director.
And Lanceville?
Hi, Mark Swain, Mayor of Lanceville. Thank you.
Good to see you, Mark. And then Tom, you want to do yourself?
Sure, I know most of you, but Tom Osborne, General Manager of Rec and Parks, and we can provide some context later, but both Richard and I go back on this agreement, and we can get some background as well, and as part of this early adoption, so if anything looks off, you can question us. So again, General Manager of Rec and Parks at the area.
Great, and then I also have asked Lynn Warwick, who's our new Director of Recreation and Culture. So Lynn, you want to say hi?
Lynn Warwick, and just so you know, I'm here for the first half of the meeting, and then I have to pop off to get to another meeting.
Lynn's off to keep our pools open during COVID, so she's off to a pool issue. So, okay, and then Cheryl, did you introduce yourself?
Cheryl Armstrong, City of Nanaimo.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just a heads up, we're on a time zone change in Parksville here, so our Shakeout drill is an hour later. So my alarms will be going off in about 5 minutes here. I'll turn off my speaker, and if I disappear, I'm just underneath my desk. And I'll be back for 1 minute.
We had one happening here, but we didn't have.
Okay. Yeah, we did virtual shakeouts here today, so. All right, and did that catch everybody? Participating? All right. So if there's no questions on the general aspect, we can get into the more in the terms of reference of the committee, and then as we get into C, we'll spend some more time on the actual agreement. But what I'd like to do, if we could now, and then I'll turn over, is the selection of a chair. And I might ask Ms. Gurry just to mention the kind of what we're trying to look for in chairs for the committee, if you would mind.
Yes, thank you, Richard. So hello, everybody. Sheila again. For a selection of the chair, the committee requires that we have a chair and either an alternate chair or, as this council here at the City of Nanaimo likes to call or use, a co-chair. So either or would work, but we need somebody to be appointed chair for this committee for the meetings, and an alternate or a co-chair. So when the chair is unable to attend and the meeting still needs to proceed, we have a chair in place of that chair. So we would like somebody to nominate somebody to be the chair of the committee. So we have a hand up, Maureen, I believe.
Hey, Maureen.
Yes, it's Director Young. I'd like to nominate Director Thorpe.
Second that. Director Craig.
All right, and then who has to?
No, sorry, it was Director Young. I nominated Director Thorpe.
And was that?
Yes, I'm second that.
Okay, so there's a
sorry.
seconder? Okay, so then we would need a vote on that.
Can we call the vote for that then?
Unless there's other nominations.
Oh yeah, if you're accepting.
Are you accepting the nomination? Councillor Thorpe?
Thanks, Richard. Yes, I'll accept the nomination. I just wondered if there was other nominations.
I'll ask that question. Is there any other nominations? Okay, that being the only nomination, then we're going to take a vote to Councillor Thorpe as the chair.
All those in favor?
It looks like it's unanimous. So any opposed? I'm not seeing any opposed. I will officially then, that was the shortest way of me having to lead this meeting, and I will now turn it over to you, sir, as the chair. And you may want to select an alternate now, if you could.
Yeah, yes, please. Councillor Thorpe or Chair Thorpe, if you could ask for nominations for an alternate or co-chair.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gurry. So nominations for an alternate or a co-chair. I see Director Wilson's hand up. Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Vanessa Craig.
Director Craig has been nominated, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Director Craig, are you willing to accept that nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for vice or co-chair? Seeing none, then I believe, Richard, do we need a vote, or can I just declare Director Craig acclaimed?
I think you can declare because there's no other nominations. That would work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I will happily acclaim or announce that Director Craig is acclaimed as vice or co-chair. Thank you, and thank you, directors. I'm very pleased to accept this appointment, having chaired the Nanaimo Parks and Recreation Commission for a number of years in past, and that's really a passion of mine. And it's a very interesting, I think, committee and topic, and I'm really pleased that Mr. Osborne and Mr. Harding have finally gotten us together, and we can have some good discussions about recreation and facilities in areas that affect all of us. So, Mr. Harding, now, all of a sudden, we move to this agenda. Terms of reference, were you going to go through that for us? I know it is attached.
Great, so I'm gonna look up here now because I can usually see me. So it is attached on page 1 of the main agenda. And so this, historically, this really replaces what was the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission that was dissolved a number of years ago. And so this is establishing a really new model for us to work together. And so this is how we devised these terms of reference. Again, that was in consultation with RDN staff, RDN board, of course, board clearing it, and then also City Council clearing it. So we are going to work our way through this, and how much detail and how often we want to meet, or these are things we can work through today as a group. But Chair, I don't know if you want me to go through all the aspects of it, but it's really us to formalize the agreement in a way that there's a chance to have discussion at least a few times a year, if not more, on the provision of these services. The membership, as we've mentioned before, is two members of council, an RDN Director A, B, C, and then a District of Lanceville representation on it, which we've all fully are here today. So I don't know, Chair, if there's any questions on the terms of reference.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. I see Director Craig. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, the 2 members of council, but I believe we have 3 members of council at this meeting, do we not?
Yes, my understanding is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but myself and Director or Councillor Turley were appointed from the City of Nanaimo, and Councillor Armstrong, I am assuming, is just attending as a guest today.
Well, no, I sent the invite.
Yeah, so
Right. I better turn to Mr. Harding and Ms. Gurry.
So thank you, Chair. So there was a vote of our council, and Councillors Thorpe and Turley were appointed to this meeting. Councillor Armstrong may have received the invitation, as I think it's in Mayor and Council's calendar, so everybody gets an invite, and she is welcome as a guest to attend. But
Well, I'm gone. Bye. I got stuff to do.
You're welcome to stay. Oh, she's gone.
I thought maybe she was an alternate or something.
No, I just assumed she was here as a guest.
yes, that was our assumption.
Anyway, so
We'll clarify with Councillor Armstrong afterwards. So.
thanks, Mr. Harding.
She seconded my nomination. Is that a problem?
no, it's not a problem, because as it was a moved forward motion anyways, it was fine. I let the recording secretary know that her votes didn't count, etc. So.
But council members are allowed to participate in any of our committee meetings. So.
Director Craig, thanks for picking up on that and getting it clarified, because I was also wondering exactly why Councilor Armstrong was here, although of course she is welcome to attend as a guest. I'd like to move into more of an overview of what this committee is all about. If there are any other questions on the brief terms of reference, recognizing that Director Young is not new to this committee, but Director Wilson and Director Craig and Mayor Swain are new. So if we go along and touch on things and you wish to ask questions, please don't hesitate to do so. So, Mr. Harding, do you want to move to the overview under letter C?
Yes, actually, Mayor Swain was actually on one of our last of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission as a council rep from Lanceville. So Mr. Swain was on with us too for a little bit.
Oh, pardon me, yes.
Yeah. So on C, so this is, and I'll maybe do a co-one with Mr. Osborne on this, but just it's quite a longer agreement in the sense of, I'm not sure if we want to go through all aspects of it, but it's the principle, if anyone wants to really talk about the principle, the goal of an agreement like this, but it's really, I think we're still leading in the province in a way where as the city is working with the electoral areas or areas beside it on provision of recreation services to all residents in all the different areas. It's quite a great agreement. Tom and I just remember Tom and I did debate on the history here. I still think it goes back to the point when Bevan Park was run by the regional district as a regional function, and when that came back to the city, it was desired that we continue on with collaboration of providing regional services, and so that's where we continued on with this agreement to ensure that we were working together and contributing in such a way. So that's the overall goal of this, is so we don't have, well, first of all, the goal is to enhance recreation and field services throughout the area, so it's seamless to the residents. We don't have in-city or out-city fees or restrictions, and that the sports groups and people using the arenas or pools or sports fields, recreation centers, they all feel it's synonymous, or it's a good link between all services. So I don't know if there's any questions on the overall purpose of the agreement and how it's structured. It's a good time for us to go through that. Again, I don't think you want me to go through line by line with it, but if there's any general questions on the agreement, how it's structured, and then we also have finance section from the NIMON. I think we have finance from RDN online too, Tom, is that right? To answer any questions you may think on how we come up with contributing amounts, and why we have certain services on and maybe some services aren't. For example, the RDN doesn't, the contributing area does not include culture, and it does not include parks. It does include arenas, pools, some specific recreation centers that on the survey are included, and it includes sports fields both within the city and outside the city. For example, the Gabriola Field is considered a contribution, as I think is the extension field. Tom, is that still correct? Or is the extension off now? Yeah. Oh, you're doing a shake. Oh, he's doing a shakeout thing. Sorry about that. Okay. So we got alarms going off for him. So again, Chair, if there's any questions on the overall agreement, we'd be pleased to answer anything we can.
So, Richard, if I may, just very basically, and I'm sure directors are aware of this, but the reason that this committee is formatted the way it is that electoral areas A, B, and C, and the District of Lantzville pay into City of Nanaimo sports fields recreation function. And so they should have a voice in decisions relating to those things, and that's why these areas are represented. Other areas are not, because they do not pay into that function. And I don't know if Ms. Mercer has the numbers readily at hand, but it might be interesting to know exactly what amounts we're talking about as far as in recent years, Mr. Harding or Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't bring the numbers that we actually received. I brought calculations, but I can get that. We're about, I think it's 1.2 is about the amount. Do you have that, Jane? What happens is we prepare all of this information, and then a percentage is applied to the numbers, and then that's what the RDN pays us. So, but I'll get you that information.
Thank you. I think directors would probably appreciate getting that if you can put that together for us. Director Craig.
Thank you. So I've read through that and a usage agreement. So is it the amount that is calculated? Is it entirely based on a percentage of usage, or it looks like it might be a combination population usage, just usage? It's just usage. Okay.
My alarm is just over. That's going to be the longest fire alarm in the history.
Glad you're all right.
Yeah, so city staff can answer questions, but I can also provide.
So I saw Mr. Osborne nodding his head, and I'll look to Mr. Harding for confirmation.
That's correct. But Tom, it's about usage. It's about usage.
Yeah, so we do a usage agreement every 5 years, and that's been done and then it's calculated. So it's based on usage, and in the agreement, it sort of breaks down what that is for. So it's, again, it's operating costs only. It does not include capital costs. That's the beholden to each area. And again, usage is done every 5 years, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the agenda of that survey. And then you'll see in the agreement how that usage is calculated. You know, if it's the pool is by drop-in, has a weight to it. Registrations has a little bit of weight to it. You move over to arenas, it actually has a higher weight to team registrations. That's more or less primary use, and drop-in sets a lesser weight to it. And then rec programs are calculated that is. But yes, all usage.
That's in section point 6 of the agreement, page 7 of the agenda, point 6 of the agreement, that goes into the details how the survey is established. And one aspect that gets... Oh, sorry, Chair, I think the other part just to highlight again is that Mr. Osborne mentioned is that this is really operating, it's not capital, so when we build a new field or a new rink, or those aren't included in our calculations. There are some maintenance projects that are included in it that aren't capitalized, and so those are included in how we work out our overall operating. And it's a net, so it's not our gross costs, it's our net, so it's our costs minus our revenues, and we come up with the net and use the net to calculate it. So we don't give you the gross expenditures first, we work out with the net.
Yeah.
Councillor Turley has a question, Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Chair. My question is with regard to the different types of facilities that are included, and whether they're included. For example, Harewood Park, does that include the covered box, the cross box, and of course the new skateboard park? Or are they separate items?
So,
I realize they're new facilities, so they wouldn't be listed specifically in this agreement.
So we have a number of new facilities that we'll need to discuss and adding, and we'll need to discuss, do we add it now or do we add it after the survey? And I believe we do it after the next survey. Tom can confirm that.
Yeah, there's two approaches, and again, the majority of the agreement speaks to where facilities were more or less being provided by the city and not being provided in the electoral area, as sort of the users and the abusers also, on that front sort of what generated the conversation. So things like fields are added by this committee, and so once a field is brought on, so maybe the city or regional district adds another complex, that would be added in and included in the following year. For rec facilities, we review that as part of our 5-year survey. So, and I like to use Oliver Woods, and there's going to be a 10% threshold. And so if a new facility comes on, maybe it could be in the rural area, it could be in the city, we'll go in and determine, okay, where are these people coming from? And if it seems that if it's determined that 10% of the population is coming from the rural areas, it will become, I'll say, more regional or district facility. Last few times we tested all the boards, it didn't meet that threshold, so it was being primarily served by city residents. We start moving into sport boxes. I would hesitate at those additions because those are being included primarily in the rural areas as is kind of thing. So it was what the genesis of the agreement was rec centers like pools, bigger Bedlam Park, Bowling Park, and so forth, things that are not happening. And then sport fields where maybe they're not being provided to the same degree in the rural areas. But there is sport boxes, for example, in Area B at Huxley Park, and other locations and going forward. So again, you're going to have to kind of stick to the terms of its fields and rec centers. If you start moving into sport boxes, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, but obviously up for discussion.
If I could just follow up on that, Tom. The easiest way with regard to lacrosse boxes is to get the registration from the Minor Lacrosse Association, because I've been involved for years, and I know that there are a lot of people that play lacrosse that live in Cedar. There's also some in the East Wellington area, and I'm sure it would meet the 10% threshold. But the question is whether or not you know, it's big enough. If they're the primary use, lacrosse is the primary use of the facilities, then I would say, but there may be other groups that use it as well that would not necessarily have the broad area representation that lacrosse does. So.
Through the chair, in response to the, I guess we'll use the word director today, Director Turley's question. When we do the arenas and the lacrosse boxes are primarily there, that we get that information from the user groups themselves. So we gather the information using the city staff, Lynn and their gang, Richard's staff, in getting all those user group information, and then that gets applied. But again, that's applied to the, in this case, it'd be Bethel Park, the non-life center and so forth, where for lacrosse, for example, that's how we get that information. So you could use that in the sport, of course, but I think you might be heading into it. I was trying to, it comes up in the north here as well with the city of Parksville, where people will say, well, let's start adding in our tennis courts, let's start adding in our sport courts, and it starts getting the agreement a little bit more challenging. And so just trying to keep the goalposts more or less in line, if you will, pun intended there.
So if I may, and I think Councillor Turley raised a good point there as a follow-up. First of all, that Harewood box was built as a multi-sport facility, multi-use facility, although we recognize that lacrosse is probably without doubt the main user. But getting back to our agreement, the survey is conducted every 5 years and to be done before October 31st, and 2020 is one of the years when the survey is to be done. So can I ask Mr. Harding or Mr. Osborne, has the survey been conducted for this year, and when will we have those numbers?
I could fill
Mr. Osborne, go ahead.
Yeah, through to the chair. There was a board report on this one that we brought forward, and the survey has been postponed to 2021 or when it can be done.
Right.
So we brought that in. We're actually doing the budgeting for, at this stage in time, we're actually maybe looking at 2022. We're just trying to grab these facilities when they're operating at a semi-normal capacity, or the numbers are going to be a mess going forward. So the best data we have is the data, unfortunately, of 5 years ago, and with the closure or reduced levels of service in all these services, we didn't think about pandemics and made that agreement a few years back. So it's 2021 to potentially 2022 is the next one will probably be agreement.
Thank you, and yes, I should have recalled because I was aware of that now that you mentioned it. A little thing called COVID disrupted a lot of our schedules, so thank you. Hopefully we can get back to normal operations as soon as possible. Director Swain, did you have a question earlier? Go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you. Yeah, my question was just really around the sport fields and more specifically the turf fields at Murray-Logan and NDSS. Because under the agreement, from what I understand, it covers vandalism as one of the costs that would be assessed and shared amongst all users. So given the fact that the agreement itself was inked in 2011, I'm just wondering when those, because to me it seems like those facilities could be added potentially to a future agreement. I understand the update and information provided about other things like cross boxes and so forth, but with respect to the turf fields, considering there has been quite a bit of vandalism, even more recently with the wire stripping and then earlier, I think this year, the couch burning on the NDSS turf field, and so there's been a fair bit of cost I think incurred with respect to vandalism. So if there's any comments from staff on that.
So I can add to that.
Thank you. Mr. Harding.
Yeah, so I add to that. So the artificial turf fields are in the agreement now. The two at Bevan, NDSS is not right now, and that is one that we would like to add to it, but it's not included in right now, is my understanding. We also, and so yes, vandalism is an issue, of course, right now. we do include that, I believe, in some of our overall costs. We are taking more steps to ensure vandalism, particularly the wire theft, doesn't continue. So we added more measures this time. We did a lot of measures last time. It's a silly and just a waste of everyone's effort because the people stealing it, they can't get anything for it. Now we've actually we did have everything welded shut, plus locked, plus put big cinder blocks on top of them. So we've done that again with bigger cinder blocks, and then we've also filled now all of the, I know you don't want to know all these things, but just to show that we're taking different ways. We filled all the boxes now up with gravel, so now they can't even get inside the boxes with them. So, but those are, the NDSS is one we want to bring, the NDSS Community Field is one that we want to add. And then there's two others that we've purchased in the last few years too, which is Rotary Bowl Track and Field, which isn't really mentioned in the agreement. That's one I'd like to talk to you more about. And then of course Froxman Stadium has also been added to our overall amenities. I don't know if that answers your question, but we do have the vandalism as a cost.
And just as a follow-up, no, that does answer it. And my follow-up is just more of a potentially question comment. It's just in relation to the increase in maintenance fees because of the homeless problem that we have in our region. And so with respect to, I know in the downtown area, there's some of this parks or sport facilities. I was trying to think of the one, the baseball diamond comes to mind down there. But I don't know if you can speak to that, like in terms of has there been any cost saving measures taken place in that area as well? I know it's not totally about the agreement, but I just wanted
no, but I think Mayor Swain, I think what it does do is we are not going to talk about more. So overall park, most of our issues with homelessness is under our parks budget, which doesn't come under the field cost center. So majority of those issues are, we call a clean team that we're sharing with Public Works on overall cleaning up of downtown and such that doesn't go into the costs for this. We do try to, as best we can, keep our field costs under one cost center, our facilities under another cost center. For just one of the reasons is the RDN contribution agreement, so that it's not changing very much over time. So for example, again mentioned any of our parks and trails, none of those are included. Our street trees, any of our cultural costs, anything like skateboards or lacrosse boxes, water parks. Any of those types of issues, garbage, unless it's related directly to a sports field or a facility is included. So we do really try to keep those separately. And as we get into, if we do show the budget to this group, which we used to do to the commission, we can also break those down and show you a little bit more of how we do break things out under park operations and recreation operations.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. Yes, I think that would be excellent information for future. Anybody else with questions at this point or comment? Yes, Director Craig.
Just had a couple of things. Swain for raising that. I hadn't actually realized that was part of the agreement. It makes me wonder about insurance and whether or not insurance can cover some of this vandalism costs. But I would like to see it broken down as was requested. But I had a question about the agreement and what this committee is kind of the focus of it is. Because obviously we're not going to tell cities in Ireland we can't build. They wouldn't want to go and build it. So is it mostly around whether or not a new facility is brought within the agreement? Is that where the discussion occurs? I'm just kind of curious, what types of discussions would we be having primarily at this committee?
And I'll let Mr. Osborne and Mr. Harding answer, but I think certainly in part it's a discussion if new facilities might be added to the levies, but as much as anything else I see it as a conduit of information so that you can go back to your constituents and have information about facilities that they are allowed to use within the city of Nanaimo that they are contributing to. And I'm hoping that as we have future meetings, Mr. Harding will take the opportunity to educate us all on what facilities are available and just give us more information. But it's a good question, so I'll let the two experts answer, starting with Mr. Harding.
Right, and I guess one of the things, Director Craig, is that we're kind of new to this. We've had long-term having participation on our Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission, which electoral areas and Lanceville have represented over the years. And in those ones, we did have a plethora of Parks, Recreation, and Culture issues that the electoral areas contributed to. And Councillor Young and Mr. Mayor Swain may want to comment on that. Even though you participated in lots of discussions, we'd have delegations, sports groups, and then we talk about the planning function. We'll talk about, for example, our Reimagine Nanaimo process coming up, which is looking at, the next 10, 15 years of where we're going to go with services. So we're kind of, this is all new for us now with this, just a focus on the contributing areas. And so we'll have to see how we want to move forward with those kinds of discussions. And what I would add to this isn't just one way, it's not just Nanaimo. For example, so if Gabriela decides they're going to put towards some type of recreation facility, it then gets added into here, same with Cedar Extension. It's more of how are we working together to provide these services throughout the overall contributing area. But I'll let Tom can articulate that better than me.
Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yeah, Richard's captured the intent for sure, and again, as certainly the RDN directors are aware, come budget time, there's often lots of questions around what makes up the bill that's coming from the city of Nanaimo, and then there's an educational aspect of understanding that. So this is a great opportunity for you to, as directors, be fully cognizant of what's making up what's coming forward. And as Richard mentioned, it's a great opportunity to know what's coming down the pipe as well too. For example, the reason why capital is not included in this agreement is there's only City Council has control of the capital projects being done or not done, knowing that there'll be operational costs coming on board. And the flip side of that is, Richard mentioned, the same can go forward for the electoral areas. If you want to push forward on a fairly specific project, you'll be responsible for that, and the operation comes in. But, I'll even point out some very practical points, but for example, 5.1 in the agreement, and it dovetails into the possible request coming from the city. It is, this is the committee that determines what sports fields should be added into the agreement by November 5th of each year. So that is sort of, okay, does that make sense, and should it be added for the following years? This is a direct outcome that needs to be determined by this group. And then it's a good opportunity for staff to report back on survey results or support coming on here. So certainly, hopefully that answers from the RDN side of the equation the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Young, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to comment on behalf of the electoral area. We've always been very happy to participate. It's been very beneficial for electoral area C to have all the use of all the facilities over the years, the arenas, the pools. I think it's a really good agreement for everyone just to participate simultaneously. It's not the right word, but just to feel like they're all part of it. And it's maybe even before my time, but I remember the big, maybe Richard can elaborate on it, quite dispute over Lady Smith dancers using maybe Bowen Park. That's all I remember, but it became quite controversial, and I'm one of these people that I just like everything to work as it is working. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Director Young. Yes, in the past, there's been some bumpy roads, and there was a time, I think it was back in the 80s, I recall, when users to Nanaimo facilities, if they lived outside the city boundaries, had to pay a surcharge. and that was very, very awkward to administer and not always fair, and I'm glad that we've been able to move away from that and find some type of formula for areas to contribute. So, Mr. Harding, maybe you'd like to add something?
No, those are, again, that's where we started off, where this is, I think we're still leading in the province of an agreement like this, that the areas can work together. That is shared, so the costs are shared proportionately. You know, there's no question the city of Nanaimo residents are using facilities extensively, but it's also on the fringe, or the areas around us are also using those facilities. So with that, we don't have an out of region fee, for example. We still have the city fee. Overall, the fees charges that we do are shared by all, and there's no other cost. So the Elizabeth dancers can still come in, but even though they don't contribute, we do have the one fee with it. But there was a time where when one electoral areas did pull out, and that's where we added the surcharge issue, but they came back in, and that was very nice, because it was definitely frustrating for particularly the user groups. All the sports groups would then have to charge theirs. So if you had a team of 10 soccer players, and 2 were from Lanceville and 6 were from Nanaimo, and the other 2 are from Cedar, the other 4 would pay quite a different fee than the ones in Nanaimo, and it definitely got cumbersome. So again, this has been on staff, and I believe on the political level too, a very good agreement for a number of years. I hope that answered your question. Ms. Mercer does have those numbers now, Chair, if you'd like, on the contributing numbers.
Oh, yes, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Mercer.
So for 2020, the city received $1,335 and $1,335,318, and for 2019 we received $1,231,500. So it's about 11.7% is about the percentage that we get covered for our costs that we submit. So,
You don't have the breakdown for each area.
no.
Tom, you might have the breakdown for each area, but we don't have that one. So.
Yeah, I don't know if Jeannie has that in the background. Jeannie?
Just give me a quick moment. So you're looking at them together, the sports fields and facilities, or do you want them separate?
It'd be by electoral area. I don't know if you have the percentages, but basically what makes up the 1.3 million in 2020, have that be coming from the rural area?
And the numbers I have are from our budget. They're going to be slightly off. And so if you're looking at them together, we have electoral area A is approximately 402,000. Electoral area B is approximately 99,400. And area C is 268,125. And then Lanceville is 431,000. Those are your process numbers, and if we're looking at the first share.
And again, so that would be 11% of our net costs of those particular recreation and field functions, not our overall parks, recreation, culture budget, but 11% of our net on those.
And we can provide to this committee as well the last survey that made up these percentage breakouts, so we can provide that staff report again. It'd be valuable for this committee, so they know, so you know what you're working with as well too. So don't use these as numbers, but it's going to be like less than 3% from Gabriel, obviously a higher amount from Lanceville and the area C, and then a little bit less the other.
Yes, thank you. I think getting those last survey results at some point would be a benefit to the directors. If I may, Mr. Harding, and this is maybe slightly off topic, but this does go to fees and charges for our facilities. And I know that you've been starting to undertake a review of fees and charges. Is that something that will come through this committee, or at least will this committee be informed of your findings on that?
Chair, I think this is a nice, one of the benefits now, and I just thought of that as you mentioned it, one of the benefits of having this group now is bringing the fees and charges to this group. because I think this would be the right body to bring it back to. We still want to bring the overall, we haven't had an update now for a number of years. And this would be, if agreed to, it would be something as myself as a GM, I'd love to be able to bring it through this group to get some comment and feedback on.
Good, thank you. Any other questions at this point, directors? Yes, Director Craig.
I was just looking at the agenda, so I'm not actually sure if this is the best place to ask it, and please feel free to put. I'm just kind of curious about the effects of COVID on 2020, your net costs, and whether or not there's going to be a surplus brought forward to 2021 or not. I'm just curious about the impact. Might be later on for the time.
No, I think that's a great question to ask, and I think now is very appropriate. I think Mr. Harding will probably tell us that with closing facilities, there's been some savings, but on the other hand, we haven't had revenue from those facilities. So, Mr. Osborne will have the same story probably, but Mr. Harding, would you like to comment?
It is on the agenda. It is the item G on the agenda today. We're going to go through that. But if you want to go to that, we can do that now and then come back to E and F.
So my apologies. I've been guilty of skipping ahead on the agenda as well. So let's move to those other items, and we'll certainly deal with this one. Do we want to talk about meeting dates and frequency before we do those other items, Mr. Harding?
I believe we do.
Yeah, Chair, actually, I think with the flow of conversation, perhaps we should move meeting dates and frequencies to the end of the agenda and keep the flow going as it is, if that's okay, or what is the committee okay with that?
That would be my preference. I think let's deal with the items on the agenda, and then we'll talk about next meeting at the end if that's agreeable. And if we're looking at item E, this was my earlier question, which I think Mr. Harding and Mr. Osborne answered, but if there's any further comments on the postponement of the survey, we can hear about that. Mr. Osborne?
Thank you, Chair. And just to reiterate, when that resolution was passed, this was on the spring side of the pandemic, and we didn't know where it would be. If I was again hedging my bets, it would be a 2022 survey. But just so you understand, we also have an agreement in the northern half of the regional district for sports fields. With the RDM being the primary provider of recreation facilities. Rec facilities are not included, but there is what's called the 69 sports field agreement. So we do this simultaneously, north and south. Obviously, it's quite a commitment to get all the user group information, do the on-site polling, and that's along those lines kind of thing. So if this pandemic, I want to sound positive today. When the pandemic moves on, it'll probably be appropriate time this committee meets to do a bit of a reset on to get a pulse of this survey. But I have to do a parallel with the north as well, so that means conversing with the Ocean Supply Service Committee. So I kind of have to keep the two committees sort of parallel, and if one jumps in front of the other, it'll affect the other one. So just a little bit of background.
I think we're all really starting to wonder if and when we'll ever get back to what we used to think of as normal. And let's hope it's sooner than later. Thanks, Mr. Osborne. Anything else on that? We'll keep updating as we go along, depending on conditions. And I think we've actually also touched on item F, new facilities in the last few years, projects under development with Mr. Harding.
Yeah, so I do want to mention that, and maybe we'll bring back the next meeting just for formally, these amenities, but it is NDSS Community Field. And I just want to mention to the group also, which I may bring back a presentation next time, is we've done to council, is we're working right now at making NDSS Community Field our medium-sized stadium. And so I can bring the presentation, if the group would like, to our next meeting on what that looks like. And that the overall goal there is that we're kind of all over the place with tournaments and any kind of a ticketed venue our goal now is let's try and work towards one area of something up to a 3,000 seat stadium that could facilitate, good soccer matches, PIU matches, Raiders football, any other kind of a ticketed venue. We think NDSS Community Field is the place to focus on that. And with that comes some other issues. So I'd like to bring that back. Also, we do now have and own and manage with a co-management agreement with the Track and Field Club, the Rotary Bowl. So that is a new amenity which we can bring back. As with the Soroxman Stadium, if you've seen, we've been adding, we added lights there this year and doing another improvements to the stadium, bringing in the West Coast League baseball team starts in next year. So a variety of issues going on there. Kind of related to this, and just to let you know, is the council has approved us going for a grant of adding 2 artificial turf fields to what we call Sherry Fields at Harewood Centennial Park. And so if that comes in, those fields are already in the maintenance agreement, but they would be turned into artificial turf fields if that grant gets accepted. And we can go through the benefits of artificial turf fields later on, either in this meeting or another meeting, why we think we could definitely use in a community for 3 to 4, even 5 artificial turf fields. They really become the workhorses of the sports community and definitely highly desired. I think the Harewood covered box is more than just a covered box. I think it's maybe one we may want to discuss later on. It's just a couple sheets of siding away of being an arena. So it is popular, and so it is one of those ones. It's a hybrid. It's definitely not just an outdoor court. It's more. So it's one of those things we may want to talk about as we move forward. But there's no major with that. So those are some of those key ones coming forward, or are in place or coming forward.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. And again, I think for future it would be really beneficial for all directors for all of us to get more details, more information about some of our major facilities, and especially that concept of a medium-sized stadium, taking in the artificial turf fields behind NDSS, the Rotary Bowl facility. You've got the Soroxman Stadium ball field facility right next door, and across the road, of course, is the ice center and the NDSS pool. So it's a great sports zone, the Larry McNabb Sports Zone, and I think it's an area that we'll want to further enhance funding available and opportunities as they present itself. Anything else on this item? Yes, Director Young.
I was just going to comment, it's unfortunate that we're in this COVID era, because over the many years I've been on the committee, which is probably my favorite, we've had so many wonderful tours with Mr. Harding to all the facilities and many of the fields, and saw the inner workings of the pool and the arenas, and so it's unfortunate that we're in this era, but maybe things will develop again over time. Anyways, I just want to say that we have had that interaction. Thank you.
Yes, good point. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Am I blocking you?
No, it's okay. I can see.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I have to say something.
Anybody else on this, Mr. Harding?
Well, just mention that to Director Young. So if any of those are interested in any tours, we can organize those. I know some aren't able to go on tours for health reasons, but our facilities are mostly open now. In fact, we just put in the 4th sheet of ice as we speak, so all 4 sheets will be up and running. We do have the aquatic center running, and all the recreation centers are now up in operation. So if community would like to, because we have some facility guys that just love giving the tours, so they'll show every pipe and valve and HVAC system. So I know, Maureen, I don't think you're not getting out right now yet, are you? Is that correct?
No, but it just made me think about one time when I was at the pool, the new pool, and down, around all the bells and everything else. I go to some site visits. I was up at the site visit just last week, actually. Just a few people were there, and I wore a mask, so depends what you would be looking at. Thanks.
So we can work with, if it's work, we can work with some schedules and make some tours if anyone's interested in any of those, particularly the new members. We can set some of those tours up if there's some interest. Your chair.
Sure, thanks. We can look at that for future, Mr. Harding. And maybe at this point it's appropriate for me to express thanks to yourself and your staff and Mr. Osborne and his staff for your efforts in gradually and safely reopening many of our facilities. As has been commented before, it's fairly easy to just shut things down. But reopening safely is much more challenging, and I think that has been accomplished. Pleased to hear that the ice sheets are going back in at Frank Crane Arena, and pools are gradually opening up, and we're starting to be able to see sports groups get back on the field or wherever their venue is. So it's thanks to your efforts and our staffs, and we appreciate that. I'd like to move, if we may, to what Director Craig raised, which is an interesting topic, the effect of COVID on our budgets and our revenues. And I sort of hedged my answer. I don't know if it's a break-even situation, but I'm sure Mr. Osborne and Mr. Harding can give us more details. What has the effect been to this point? Mr. Harding, we'll start with you.
Right, so and again, I'll go by specific areas. So there's no question that by shutting pools down, we actually save a lot of money. Pools are a very expensive venture, so we've definitely made some savings there. However, we've made some savings with arenas too, but arenas get closer to paying for themselves. None of them pay for themselves completely, but arenas are probably the closer of doing that. Sports fields don't pay. They pay, the revenue for them is not very high, but then their overall operating cost isn't as high either in some areas. So all in all, we'll probably be under, but it's still. Ms. Mercer can talk about that. We won't know, of course, until January how everything works, and maybe in February when we get the finals in. That's where we normally start doing our calculations of where we really end up. But Ms. Mercer, maybe else.
Yeah. So what we did was we took our actuals at June 30th, and then so the first 6 months of the year were actuals, and then the last 6 months we estimated the cost based on projections given by Richard's departments. And so what it's looking like is for 2020, we'll have about, from our total costs that relate to this agreement, we're about $10.8 million. And that compares to what was provided in the budget for 2020. That's about a decrease of $759,000. So we're closer than I thought we were going to be, but that is based on estimates that we had at June. So that will change. We're currently doing our third quarter projections, so that we'll have a more updated number for that. But that's how we calculated it out. So that translates into just under $1.3 million if you use 11.7%. So we're close to what we received.
Because even though, so we were fully operational until March 12th, and maybe a little bit beyond, and then we got the arenas back in August, the pools, one of the pools in September, and then the rec centers later, September, October, and now all 4 sheets now starting next week. So it's a bit of a mixture. Definitely the openings are different with it, so there's been definitely some savings, but also definitely some reductions of service.
Director Craig, does that at least partially answer your question or follow up?
Yeah, so I guess the question comes where the accounting happens at the RDN. So do you do you calculate all the usage for 2020 and then invoice at the end of 2020, or have we already paid this? I should probably already know this, but I'm exposing my ignorance. So
No, not at all. Now's the time to ask questions. No such thing as a question. Mr. Osborne, I think, has an answer.
So I'll test it out, make sure I understand it, and then I'll verify with Jean. But per the agreement, the following year's budget is set on the 2020 actual. So the cause and effect of this year will set the tone for next year. So this year's budget sets, therefore people have a guaranteed amount of money to operate. So they, the provider, in this case the city of Nanaimo, has that set amount, so they have that in play. So in other words, if the lower actuals coming in from this year will actually affect the 2021 budget for the city of Nanaimo. A little bit different, and Jeannie, I'll test my wisdom on this one. A little bit of the opposite for the RDN, because then we calculate our cost on the budget amount for the current year. And it's a really relatively small amount, because that includes the amount that goes to the extension field and the amounts that are eligible for the roll field and Gabriel. That's sort of the credit, if you will, kind of thing. So am I correct on that, Jeannie?
Yeah, so what happens is when we originally present the budget in November, it's all based on estimates, and then when we bring it back in February, at that point we receive actuals in that, and we do an adjustment for that difference. So it is reflected in, for that current year budget for the RDN, that actuals already built into it by the time of the final.
But I guess it's simply, this year's budget's set, if you will, the money's been provided to the city to operate, but the net effect of COVID, if you will affect the 2021 budget amounts per the agreement.
Yes, Director Craig.
And so 2020's already been set and paid. So what happens if it appears there probably will be a surplus? Is that just brought forward into the 2021 to offset the fees for 2021 for each area, according to our contribution agreement?
Osborne?
Through the chair again, so we'll get the actuals from the city of Nanaimo for 2020. That forms the 2021 budget. So if you will, it'll be a lesser amount. There won't be a surplus, but you'll be charged less because of the way this agreement is structured.
I'm just referring to the monies we've already paid for 2020, but they're going to spend that amount.
That's correct.
So what happens to that, Sean?
It'll be reflected in the 2021 budget.
But next year.
Right. So we get the roll up from the RD gets a roll up of the city of Nanaimo expenditures for 2020. So they would have it estimated, obviously. Sorry, my notes are a bit of a mess here, but less than 700 or 800,000 right now. So if the estimates carry on, as the city staff are saying, it will be less 800,000 or 7,500 in 2021.
Yeah. So that's where the savings come.
Can I ask
Yes,
a follow-up
go ahead.
question? So the 2021 is going to be based on 2020 actuals. What happens if COVID miraculously disappears and for the entire year you run at normal? The operating costs would actually be much higher than we've actually budgeted for it. What happens in that situation?
Through the chair, this is going to be a challenge for city staff because they're going to be budgeting off of the amount per the agreement, and I know Richard is doing exactly what we're doing, which is trying to figure out what is the operating costs of a full year of COVID potentially in 2021, and while you're opening your facilities and for the most part it's less revenue, less people,
And more
operating costs for the most part start to stay or higher. So it's going to be a bit of a budgeting thing. I'll say a bit of a budget problem for City of Nanaimo to balance the books under that. This is where this agreement is functional in normal times. But again, unfortunately, the savings that you're talking about this year reflect next year. So as the RDN side of the game, you're picking up that savings then. but at the same time, to balance the books for 2021 for city staff, they'll have to do it with the revenue coming year.
If I can
I'll sort of, maybe, Chair, you can refer to the city finance staff, because I don't want to put words in there.
Well, I know I'm certainly not going to try to explain it, Mr. Osborne, but maybe Ms. Mercer can have a stab at supplementing what you told us.
Yeah.
Or Mr. Harding.
So, yeah, so for next year, what we will receive from the regional district based on our 2020 numbers. And that's all we'll get. And so we would have to figure out how to fund the remaining portion, which will likely come from taxes for the city of Nanaimo residents. So it's a budgeting issue for us because we will be short some funds from the RDN per a normal year, and we will have to pick that funding up somewhere else. And that will generally be taxation.
And all I would add to the committee is that, and as it won't come as a shock, but this is really strange times for us. So even though we have the pool open right now, it's you know, under COVID restrictions, even the arena's a little bit better, but the pool itself, it's really hard to project how our costs and everything are going to go. And so we're working through the number of scenarios, and it really depends on how the pandemic goes. Because we could be shut down again as early as November, but we could be chugging along in other ways. So again, another nice thing having this committee together is that we, as we meet, we can explain things a bit more. But it's definitely fluid for us. Daily, we're having to modify different things as everybody in operations, the private sector or the public sector, are doing. And recreation centers are definitely high up there on modification of what we're trying to do to provide some services. And so, for example, we do not have a date right now to reopen Bevan Pool. We think all we can do right now is keep the aquatic center open to provide some aquatic services, and we don't have a date right now to reopen Bevan Pool. We've got everything else open. We do think Kin Pool will be open again next year. We're planning to be open in May like it normally would be. But we don't see the other ones. We don't have a projection yet for that until COVID can change a little bit, where we see it making sense to open it up. And that's not out in the public yet. We just don't have a date yet for it.
And of course, operating costs remain fairly constant, whether you're dealing with 12 paid admissions to the pool or 200. Costs the same to run the facility. So budgeting on that contingent is a challenge. Director Young, go ahead.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to ask. In this era, what numbers are allowed in the pools and the arenas? I have no idea, so I just thought I would ask, because it would certainly affect your revenue.
Absolutely. Mr. Harding?
Sorry, I just had a clarification question. I missed that last part. Sorry, Director Young.
Certainly. I just thought, a question came out of it all that how many people are actually allowed in the pools and arenas, because this would affect your revenues totally. And I just wondered, I read in the paper that there's no audiences or spectators at the like Buccaneers games. So I guess there's no spectators allowed at all for any games. So I just wondered that kind of a detail, whether it's the right time to ask. I'm not sure.
It's it feeds Chair through the Director Young. It feeds into the issue of how fluid this is. So we're under the order right now of 50. And so realistically, the aquatic center is not at any one time have more than 50 patrons in the pool. There's a number of confusion or changes in the health order last week where it looks like you could have at least 50 participants plus 50 spectators. And that's where we're still getting some clarification on, because there's different views of how that's interpreted. And so we're still working on clarification. So, but until the health order changes, the maximum you'd have is 50. So say if we have the ice rink open for Frank Crane, is you'd have the participants and ideally another 50 spectators. But we're not there yet. But that would be the maximum we have right now. So it's definitely, and each venue has different capacities based on, for the aquatic center, for example, how many we can get through a change room, and then because we have the cleaning protocols that have to come in place also. So it's one thing to have them in, but then that's why you have to book your time to come in. You have a session, you get people out, we clean, then we can bring more people in. So there's just a lot of protocols with it. So there is more staffing, cleaning costs associated with less people, less revenue.
And that information's available on the website too.
So, Mr. Harding, on that topic, I know that Nanaimo Council was briefed on your reopening plans and guidelines for arenas and pools. I'm wondering if there's some documentation related to that could be emailed and forwarded to the area directors just for their information, in case they get questions from their constituents.
Absolutely. Mr. Gary also just mentioned too, we have all this on our website too, but we can maybe we can send some links to the members of where all the information is on. So all of them, and we're updating it as much as we can as things do change. But we can send those links. We'll get lead services will send those links to you.
Thank you very much. That would be useful. Directors, anything else related to COVID and costs and anything else? Mr. Osborne.
Just bring it up, and Mr. Harding and I spoke about it. I think this would be the perfect forum just to get clarification, because I'd rather it happen here than at a table where answers cannot be provided. And there were some early questions that came on in regard to the redeployment of city staff and back to the cost centers and so forth. And I just wanted to take the opportunity for Richard to explain, for example, when a lifeguard was redeployed, if or if not, that was picked up under the cost center of the pool still, and I understand it is not, but I just want to put that on the table so there's clarification at the table.
Yeah, that's correct.
Mr. Osborne.
Thank you. And then Ms. Brooks can confirm with me, if I'll say it correctly. So anytime we took lifeguards, when we shut the pools down and we put lifeguards into other, we initially shut when the pandemic hit, we took advantage of doing our major shutdowns of our facilities like we normally do. So we kept guards on that would normally do pop up with those shutdowns. And as it looked like when we closed indefinitely, then we redeployed those staff into outside and different locations, and they were not charged to the recreation function or either the arenas or the pools or the rec centers. Yeah. Hence the saving on it. But for those who, as we go through the budget, you'll see more. But the recreation side and alone, and with fields, we have over $8 million worth of revenue a year, which offsets the cost to make up our net. So that's definitely a huge hit on us. So this year, so revenues are of course way down.
Thank you. Anybody else? So, Mr. Harding, next up is Reimagine Nanaimo. Do you want to move to that now?
Yes, it's more of an introductory aspect. Again, something I'd like to bring forward is just making sure that the committee knows that we are doing a Reimagine process, which also includes an update to our Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan. And so in that, we'd like to have some sessions with the group on as we're going through the planning of that, and then also maybe how you'd like for us to include residents in your areas on this area, because particularly the surveys that are related to recreation facilities and sports fields. So there's ways of how we want to engage and participate with the different electoral areas in Lansville on this process. It would be good to have those discussions as we move through the process.
Thank you. And again, City of Nanaimo website is a good starting point, but there is a lot of feedback being requested to do with recreation facilities in the city, and that, of course, affects the area directors and Landsville that are represented here today. So I encourage you to have a look at that and make your residents aware of that survey, because I'm sure they, in many cases, use those facilities or have ideas about future possible facilities. Was that it for this topic, Mr. Harding, or did you want to get into any more?
I just wanted to make sure we're aware of it, and then also as we go through it, you may hear us talk more about it. Just so that you know, this also includes our update to our official community plan. We're also including the active transportation plan, our water supply plan, and there's one more I'm missing in there. One more. There's a number of plans we're trying to do, and part of it we're just trying to do all our engagement together rather than PRC going out doing its engagement, planning doing theirs. We're trying to include this all together, so it's a little more seamless to the community and all our strategies and plans together.
A huge project that certainly recreation and sports fields are a big part of that feedback, so we encourage that. This meeting was scheduled. Sorry, Director Craig.
Sorry. Could I just ask what the timeline for the survey on the recreation is? I'm just, I've been following Reimagine Nanaimo, but I must admit I wasn't engaging because I'm not a City of Nanaimo person, but I didn't think of the recreation aspect, so that's very interesting that you pointed that out. Can you just provide us, when are the surveys closing?
So first of all, sorry, Mr. Harding, before you jump in, there's actually a number of surveys. There's an overall general survey, and then there's sort of breakout surveys on different areas. At least one of them focuses directly on sports fields and recreation. Now, I'm thinking end of October, but Mr. Harding, am I wrong on that?
No, you were correct, and we just because of some just with the summer months and everything, we decided to extend that into November. And again, we could send a link to this committee on the recreation survey. There may be some aspects on the culture side that may or may not be pertinent, but definitely we could send the links to the recreation side. And again, I look forward to be able to present to this committee this process as we move forward, because it will definitely. There'll be different stages to it. These are the preliminary, just the kind of the initial surveys of what people are thinking and where we're at. And then, of course, as we start developing policies, procedures, or policies and goals and objectives, I'd like to bring some of those drafts back to this group as those are being developed.
So the entire process is going to take months or a year or whatever, but this is the initial request for feedback. And again, I encourage residents in all of the areas to have a look at this and become aware of it, and we welcome their feedback. Anything else, directors? I think that brings us then to looking at our date for the next meeting, and I note a number of choices. I'm not sure if we can quickly come to a consensus, or if you would rather give it some thought, check your calendars, and let us know, and we can try and narrow it down. We're looking at the first week or second week of December on Thursday, morning or afternoon. Quite frankly, at this point, I don't know what my calendar is going to look like, but if anybody has a problem definitely that they're aware of with any of those dates, please indicate to us. If not, Ms. Gurry, I'll maybe turn to you. Can we indicate choices to you? What's the best way of narrowing this down?
Thank you, Chair. So I think these dates have been checked by, and I think staff have been involved as well, for sure, to make sure it didn't conflict with any councillors or your calendar. So you should be good for any of these dates or times. And you could choose now today, or we could email you the options and you could let us know. If you wanted to just maybe select the 3rd or the 10th, we could look at times and confirm which times on one of those days work. So maybe if you could just select a date, one of those 2 dates, and then we could get down to the specifics of time with you afterwards.
Well, thanks, Ms. Gurry. Let's see if we can deal with it now, and that's a good starting point. December 3rd or December 10th, they're both Thursdays. Anybody have a preference? Either one's good. And how about timing? December the 3rd, 2 to 4, or 3 till 5. December the 10th, 9 till 11, or 2 to 4. And I suggest maybe emailing preferences, first and second choice, to Ms. Gurry. Ms. Gurry, would that work?
That could work, yeah.
Could work. If nobody, if somebody wants to make a definite suggestion right now and everybody else
Mayor
is
Swain
agreeable, we can just go.
Mayor Swain has his hand up.
I'm just going to say afternoon for me if possible.
Okay, that helps.
And I will not be sending an email. Thanks.
Okay. Director Craig.
Afternoon's fine for me. I prefer not the 3 to 5, so either the 2 to 4 on either day.
Okay.
So I'm seeing 2 to 4, yes.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that. Director Young?
Yes, 2 to 4 is best for B2 either day.
All right, so that's good. We've narrowed it down to 2 till 4, and now we just need a date. Director Wilson?
I can get unmuted. Let's just pick December the 3rd and then have everybody say no.
Thank you very much. Director Wilson is suggesting December 3rd from 2 till 4. Does anybody have a problem with that? Seeing none? Wow, good job. I think we've got it. So, Ms. Gurry, December 3rd, 2 till 4 it will be.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just wanted to...
Unless things change. Sorry?
Right, unless you all say no for some reason now. I just wanted to update you on Councillor Armstrong. So our apologies. She did actually get sent the invitation because she is an alternate for the City of Nanaimo, Councillors Turley and Thorpe. So she is our alternate. So she was invited, and she will be attending if either Councillors Thorpe or Turley cannot attend. She will be here in their absence. So just my apologies to Councillor Armstrong for her exit, and she has been informed of that. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Oh, good. Thanks, Ms. Gurry. Actually, yeah, I'm glad you did mention that because I didn't recall her being appointed as an alternate. We don't always do that. So good to know, and of course, she's always welcome to join as a guest, as we've said before anyway.
Yeah, I had
yeah.
Oh, I just was going to say I had the motion checked, so we did actually appoint an alternate this time, but you are correct, Chair, so thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. So, directors, our meeting was scheduled till 12:30, and we're doing very well. We've got 5 minutes. If there's anything else that people wanted at this point to ask about, please do so. Otherwise, it just, I think, remains to me to thank you for your attendance today. I'm really glad we got this committee up and running again. Thanks to Mr. Harding and his staff, as I've said, and Mr. Osborne and his, and the participation of Ms. Mercer and Ms. Bradburn to give us the financial background. I think as we move along through future meetings, we'll all get more and better informed on the aspects of fields and recreation that we'll be dealing with here and get a better handle on the budget situation, and hopefully that things improve in terms of COVID and we can get things back some semblance of normal. So unless there's anything else, motion to adjourn. Director Craig, seconded by Director Wilson. All in favor? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your day.